guys. So in this video, we will be doing our Hotstar clone project. Okay, it will be a very easy project. Don't worry about it. We'll be using HTML and CSS to create the landing page of Hotstar. So please focus upon it. Go through the entire project properly and complete it. At the end of the project itself, once you have completed it, please do the project only in Code Sandbox. Don't use anything else because you will have to submit the project using Code Sandbox itself. Once I've completed the project, there will be a link on the top of the code sandbox saying copy link. Right over there, you can copy the link. And then down in the description of the video, you have the project submission link. Okay. Go on that clear form, use the same email address that you have used in your attendance sheet. Fill up that form with the attendance email itself. Once I've done that, post the code sandbox link in the Google form that has been provided to you. Also, you can share the code sandbox on LinkedIn or a recording of the page that you have created on LinkedIn as well. It will help you guys to get like more people know about what you're currently doing. And if you want, you can share that as well in the Google form. That is not compulsory, but try to do that as well. It will be really very helpful for you as well as for us. Okay. So thank you so much. Let's start learning.
Hello everyone, in this video we are going to be making the clone of Disney plus Hotstar. I'll give you a quick review of what our end product will look like and then we'll get on to the coding part. So this right here is what we are going to be making today, and here are several pictures, here are cards that have animations running in the background of them, and you have these cards right over here that have a slide effect, and you have these sliders here that automatically keep running on an infinite loop, and this is the search and the subscribe login button, and this is our nav bar. So let's get on to the coding part. So here we have our basic HTML boilerplate ready, wherein we'll change the title. And after that, we're going to be linking a style sheet that we'll be using for designing. We're also going to be linking a quick JS tool here, which will help us to use our JS tools. And you can find this on the internet, or you can just copy it from right over here. All right, so first up, we're going to be making our navigation bar, and for that, we'll make a class called navbar. And inside this, we'll link our images. So right now, I have all the images and the videos that we need for this preloaded here. You can download them from the internet, or you can use them as per your own convenience. We'll give the image tag here, and we'll give a class here to the logo as brand logo, which we'll use for designing our CSS for the logo that will be inside our navigation bar. We'll create an unordered list where we'll have all the elements that will be inside of our navigation bar, such as the titles, the movies, and the anything that is written right over there. So we'll create a class for this called as navlinks, and inside this we'll create several lists, which will have the class as let's say nav items. We'll use the a tag for creating hyperlinks, which will not lead us anywhere as of now, but if you want, you can do these alterations later on as per your own convenience. So just copy paste some of this. Okay, so after this, if we head on to our site, we can see that the logo is still not visible because the logo is white and the background is white as well. But the links, you can see these links right over here. So let's get on to designing this nav bar a bit. We'll give the basic as, we'll put the margin as 0. The margin padding and the box sizing. After that, we'll also set the default attributes for the body of the content. So let's set the width as 100%. The background color, I'm sorry, the background will be a, a hex code that is the default background that we have for the Disney Hotstar website, and that is OC111B. We'll put the position as relative, and now let's get on to our font family. The font family might not be available on your system, so you might have to install it from Google. But if it is there, so you can use it directly. So these were just the default styling that we do every time before we start creating our specific designs that we need for our website. These are just the default styling that we need to do at first, so that the margin and the padding, everything is set to 0, so that we don't face any external problems due to the default margin or default padding that we get with a website. So after that, let's go style our navbar. We'll give the top and left margins as 0 because we don't need anything overlapping with our navbar, and we need it to be on the top right. We need it to be on the topmost area of the website. We set the padding, and now we use the background here as well. So for this background, we'll use the same hex code that we have used in our body. So that will be OC111B. And after that, we'll create the Z index, and we'll give it a little bit higher number because we want our navbar to be on the top of all the items irrespective of wherever it is. And we'll create a display as flex. After this, we'll align all our items to the center. All right, so we are done with styling the basic navigation bar, and now let's go over and see what we have created. So, okay, you can see the logo right here because we have changed the background and now the logo is visible, and you can see these hyperlinks here as well. Now, what we need to do is we need to rescale these because these are still not in proportion and they do not look good. So, we need to rescale these, and we'll go style our class brand logo, and we'll set the height as, let's say, 70 pixels. After that, we'll design the links, we'll design the hyperlinks that we created. So we will write nav links here, and inside this we'll put the top margin as 10 pixels. We'll also set the display here as flex, and the list style will be none so that we get rid of all those small dots that we have there in the list. After that, we'll go and style our nav links. We'll go and style all the nav items that are there, and we'll style these hyperlinks that we have created inside of it. So we'll put the text decoration as none because we don't need the default color of these links to be blue. We do not need them like that. So we'll put the text decoration as none. After that, we'll set our left margin as 20 pixels, and our text transform will be capitalized. So even if I write something here that is not in capital letters, it will get capitalized by itself. And the color that we need right here is white. We'll also set the opacity here as let's say 0.9. So let's save this and let's look at what we have. So here you can see that all these things are now in alignment and in the color, in that they are in the perfect color that how we need them to be. And now we have to create the search bar and the subscribe button and the login button right over here. So let's hop on back to the HTML portion and we'll continue doing that. Now, outside of this unordered list, we'll create a div that will have the class as, let's say, right container. And inside, we'll put here a text bar that will create our search button. We'll put an input type as text and we'll create the class as search box. We'll also put our placeholder here as search. After that, we have the subscribe button. So for that, we'll use the button and we'll give it a class as, let's say, sub button. And the text will say subscribe. We also have a login link there. So for that, we'll create a hyperlink with the A tag and we'll give it a class as login link. That will ask us to log in each time we click on that. All right, so that is done. And let's see how it looks like. So here we have all the three things that we needed, the search bar, the subscribe button, and the login button, but these are not looking quite good right now. So let's get on to styling these as well. I'll put the display here as block and the margin to the left as automatic so that it automatically assigns it to the rightmost corner of the navigation bar. After this, we'll design our search box and we don't need a border, so the default border should be none because there is a default border that is there as of now. We don't need that, so we'll put the default border as none. And the border at the bottom should be of 1 pixel solid. After that, we need the background as transparent and we don't need an outline, so let's set our outline to none. We'll give the height and the color of these now. So height will be 30 pixels and the color is after that we have also set our width here. So let's set our width here and we need our width as let's say 250 pixels. After that, we also need all the text that is there to be transformed to capitalized letters by default. So let the text transform to capitalize. The font size and the font weight. Font size will be 16 pixels and the font weight will be of 500. After that, we need a transition here so that whenever we click on that, we have a transition working. And we need that transition to be working in, let's say, zero 0.5 seconds. So we have designed our search box and the next that we need to do for the transition to really work is to design something called focus. So when we design our search box and we write focus here. Inside of that, we'll write the width as 400 pixels so that whenever the focus is done on the search box, the width increases to 400 pixels, and the border color would be a hex code that is 1F80E0. All right, so let's save this and let's see that what we have got here. So as you can see, whenever I'm clicking on this search bar, the width of the search bar is increasing to 400 pixels that we set there. And also this line is changing from white to blue. That is corresponding to this hex code that we have written right over here. So let's go on to designing our subscribe button and our login buttons. We gave the class as a sub button to our subscription button. So inside that, we'll set the background. That is also a hex code that is 1F80E0. And after that, we have the height as 30 pixels. This height and width is just a approximation, just a guess of what it should be. If you have anything, if you have any problems that they are bigger than they should be, that they are smaller than they should be, then you should try your hand at this and it will get better with time. After that, we have the padding as 0 and 20 pixels. And the color is also a hex code of white. Let's set the border radius because we need our borders to be slightly curved and not completely a square. So we'll set our border radius as 5 pixels, and we don't need a border by default there. So let's set the border to none, and also we don't need an outline here. So we'll also set that to none. After that, the text transform here will also be capitalized, but in this case, we're going to be using uppercase. The font weight and the font size. So the font weight is 700 and the font size is 12 pixels. Also, let's set a margin. And we are done for the subscribe buttons. Now let's get on to designing our login button. So the class that we gave for the login button was the login link. We'll use the same basic attributes that we have set above. We'll set them here as well. We'll give the opacity as 0.9. Text transform to uppercase. And font size and font weight. Font size adds, let's say, 15 pixels. Font weight at 700. And the text decoration as none, because we don't need the link to be blue or by any color that it is by default. We need a link to be plain. So let's save all this right here and let's see what changes we have got. All right, so as you can see, we are done with our navigation bar. The logo is right over there. These hyperlinks look perfect. The search box is working in transition as we needed it to. And the subscribe button and the login button are right over here. We'll do a little bit change here. We created this as a division class, but we need to create it as a nav class so that we know that it is a navigation bar that is right here. So let's change this to nav and save this. Still the same, won't make any effects to this one though. So after the nav bar, what we need is these sliders right over here that slide on their own on an infinite loop, and we have the pictures and the text here perfectly aligned with each other. Now this we're going to be mostly doing with JavaScript and not with HTML and CSS. So we're just going to be creating a basic class here that will be called our carousel container. That we can use to style the class that we are making right now, and we'll create a class called carousel inside of this. Now, after this, let's go to our style and create the basic styling that we need for these carousels, these sliders right over here, and give them some basic designing. So, carousel container, and we'll set the position as relative, the width as 100% so that it covers 100% of its width and does not get compressed. The height will be 450 pixels, and we'll also put a padding here. The top and bottom padding is 20 pixels and the left and right padding is 0. We'll put the overflow x as hidden so that we do not have things overflowing towards the x-axis, and the top margin as 80 pixels. For that, we have our carousel class. Inside this, we'll put the display as flex, the width as let's say 92% because that's what we'll be needing right now. We'll not need 100% of its width inside the carousel, and the height as 100%. The position will again be relative here, and the margin will be automatic. First up, let's code our entire sliders in HTML itself, and then we'll see how we can shift all those properties to JS and how we can continue doing that in JS as well, while HTML content will be just commented out. So inside this div carousel, we'll create a class that will call slider, and we'll have another class here that will call slide content. So inside the slide content, we'll create a h1 tag which will have the class as movie title, and let's say the first movie is Loki. So we'll have this here, and then we have the P tag for some description of the movie that we'll give here. We'll give the class as, let's say, movie description or description, and we'll give some default text here for now. So let's say we give it around 15. We have some default text working here. So after this, what we're going to be doing is outside this div of the the slide content, we'll give our image tag here and we'll link our image that we're going to be using here from our images folder. So let's save this and we'll move on to designing all these things first, and then we'll see how our website looks like. We already designed our carousel container and the carousel class here. Now we'll design our slider class. So we'll give the flex properties here and the right margin as 30 pixels, position as relative, and the background will use a RGBA code of 0.5. That's a slightly grayish color than pure black. After this, let us set our border radius to 5 pixels and the width and height as 100% here. We also need a transition here. So let's put our transition as 1 second, and the overflow, any kind of overflow that will be facing will be hidden. So we are done with our slider class. Now let's move on to the images that we are going to be adding inside our sliders. So for that, we'll create a class called dot slider image for all the images that are going to be inside it. We'll give the width as 70%, and the minimum height that should be assured should be 100%. Object fit as cover, and the display property will be block. After this, we're going to be setting the margin left as automatic, so that, as I've told earlier, it assign itself to the right hand corner of the container that it is inside. After this, we have the slide content. So inside the slide content, we'll put the position as absolute, because we do not want the content to be moving around. We want it at an absolute place, and it should be stuck there. The width and height and the z index as 2, so that the content does not go behind the slider container that we have, and it stays on top of it, just beside the image. The background will be linear gradient, because we want this gradient effect right over here, between the picture and the text, the content, and we want it towards the right hand side. So we'll write to right, and we'll use a hex code for the color, 030B17, and OC 111B0. It is B00 right here. After that, we'll set the content color as white, that is left. So we are done for the slide content. Now let's move on to the class that we created with the name of the movie title. So the movie title, the padding from the left should be approximately 50 pixels, and the text transform should be capitalized, because we want it to be in capital letters irrespective of how it is written in our code. The top margin as 80 pixels. After this, let's move on to the description of the movie. So the class, I think, was movie des, and yes, in this, let's give some basic padding. In the left as 3 pixels, the text transform as capitalize, and okay, I'm sorry, I did the same for the movie title. It's not in the movie description. We have to do it differently. So the width here will be 80%, and let's give other attributes such as the line height, that will be 30 pixels, and the left padding would be the top margin as 30 pixels, and some opacity that will give here, let's say, 0.8. So let's save this and see what we get on our website. All right, so the content is not as we expected it to be. There might be some changes. Okay, so the width here on the slide content will be 50%, not 50 pixels. And so I think that should do it for now. Let's save this and see what we have here. Okay, so the basic slider is ready. We have our picture right over here, and we have the content and all these things here. So right now we can't see the gradient effect, and I forgot to mention here that right here over here we have to write what percentage of the gradient we need to be done. So we'll say 80% over here. We'll save this and let's go to our website and look at it. Okay, so now it is all perfect. We have the movie title here, we have the movie description, and the photo is the picture in the background is gradient. So that was doing this in HTML and CSS. Now we'll see how to do this in JavaScript. So here we'll just comment out this whole section because we do not need it as of now because we'll be doing it in JavaScript. So let's just comment this out and let's move on to the JavaScript portion now. Now, as we know that we have created our carousel content and the slider that we have put inside a carousel, that is we have a carousel right over here and inside that we have a div that we have named slider and the position of slider is relative. So we'll see how we'll create this effect using that relative position so that when one slide changes to another, the another automatically dynamically just comes towards the center. And we run this on an infinite loop using JavaScript. So here in my JavaScript code, I have created an array that we are going to be using while we create that effect. And this array you can copy from the source code given along with this video, or you can write it by yourself. It's no compulsion. So I have created an array called movies here, and I have given three parameters that are name, description, and the image. And I have given all the locations of the images that we are going to be using inside that. Now let's get started with how we need to write the JavaScript for creating a similar effect, that is this slider right over here. So we'll start by creating our carousel element, and the query selector method is used for using the methods from HTML to JavaScript. So we'll write query selector here and we'll put dot carousel right over here. After that, we are going to be creating an empty array of uh, the sliders. So let's sliders is equals to an empty array. And after this, we are going to be creating a counter for our slide index that will be named as slide index and we'll set it by default to 0. Now, as you can see, we are getting a yellow lining over here and it says that carousel is assigned to a value but never used. That means we have just declared it, but we have not used that. So as we go along with this code and we use the functions and the properties wherein we mention carousel, it will be automatically removed from here. And our slide index is to track the current slide, to keep a counter on the current slide. So let's add a comment here that we are using it to track the current slide. After this, we'll create a function here that we will call create slide. And what this function is going to do is, so the first thing that we need to check here is the slide index. So we'll create an if condition. If our slide index is greater than or equal to the length of our movies, movies is the array that we created right here and it will refer to that whenever we mention the name movies. So if the slide index is greater than the length of the movies, then it will set the slide index to 0. Otherwise, it will do nothing. Now let's move on to create our DOM elements. And first up, we have slide. So we'll use document dot create element method to create the element, and we'll copy paste this here because we need it multiple times. So We'll change this. We'll put image over. Then we have our content. After that, we have the h1 tags. And after that, we have the p tag. After this, we have the most important step that we have, and that is attaching all the elements. So create a comment right over here that we're going to attach all the elements. And after this, we'll use the append child method to create a child, and inside this we'll use the document.createText node to create an empty string for the image. And we'll do similar things for all the other elements that we have created upwards. So we'll do it for the h1 tag. And we'll pass on the slide index from the array movies that we created here with the name. After this, we have the content. We did the content attaching for the h1 tag, and now we'll do it for the p tag. After this, we'll append the p element to the content variable. Now, to mention the image source, we'll use the image element, and right below this, I'll add up a quick comment that we are setting up the images. Now, the image element dot src is equals to movie slide index dot image, and after that we'll increase the index by 1, so we'll write slide index plus plus. Now next up, we'll create the elements that we created in the style.css folder. So for this, we'll set the exact same names that we have used in the classes inside the style CSS. So I'll write that we are setting up the element class names here, and they should be exactly the same as we have used in our CSS. So we'll use slide dot class name is equals to slider content dot class name is equal to slide content. the h1 dot class name is equal to the movie title, and the p dot class name is equal to movie description. So that was movie des. We will end this function by pushing the slider elements to the slide array. So sliders dot push to slide. Now the last thing that we have to do for the slider is create the slide effect. So we'll write an if statement here, and we'll say if slide length. Now we have a little bit of formula right over here to do the calculations bit, and I'll explain it in just a while. Sliders at index 0 dot. So I've completed the function right over here, and now I'll explain it how it is done, how it is calculated. So the calc is a CSS formula to do the calculations. This negative right over here is it indicates that we want negative left margin, and the 100 because we want the slider to go 100% of the screen. And after that, we multiply this 100 with the calculations because we want negative 100% per slide. Now we will subtract 2 from sliders dot length because we want second slide to be in the middle, and we will subtract the margin value from this 100%. So we are doing the same here with 30 right over here because we are multiplying 30 because we have 30 pixels on margin on the right. Now, instead of calling this function just one time, we have to call it more than one time because we want it to be sliding. And for that, we'll create a for loop and we'll say let I equals to 0, I is less than 3, I plus plus. And inside this, we'll call the function that is create slide. We'll also do the set interval part because we do not need the functions to be, we do not need the sliders to be just sliding at any time that they want. We need them to be sliding in a certain interval. So we'll use the set interval function here, and inside the set interval function, we'll write create slide, and then we want it to be sliding in 3 seconds. Here it is. Now, one thing that we forgot to do is we have to attach our scripts here, otherwise the scripts and the JavaScript and the HTML code cannot function together. So we'll write script src is equal to index.js. Let's save this and see that what we have got. Now when we save this and then we go to our website, we see that we have perfectly created the sliders that are sliding in a time duration of 3 seconds, and they are sliding from left to right, for which we wrote the formula that is this right over here. So all right, that is done. Now let's move on to creating these boxes, these slides over here that we'll be using and which will have animation in the background running whenever we hover over them. So let's move on to our HTML and we'll create some video cards here. So let's create a div here which will called video card container. And inside this div we'll have another class that will call video card. In this, let's link our images using the image tag. And first up, we have the Disney PNG, that is the Disney video that will be playing there. Let's give this a class as video card image. Then we'll attach the video that is going to be played in the background whenever we hover over the card. So the source for this is videos slash me.mp4. And also we'll make sure that these videos are muted and they go on loop. We'll also give them a class that will call card video. Now we have such video cards. We have such 5 video cards, right? So let's just we'll just copy paste this entire thing and we'll copy paste it 5 times so that we get 5 such containers. Okay, so I have created these divisions 5 times with the name of video card. And now what we need to do is we need to change the pictures. That is, we need to change the sources of these pictures. So the second one which we had was Pixar, and the video also we need to change. So on and so forth. Change all of these. So we'll save this and we'll see how our website looks like now. So as you can see, we have these images and all these boxes right over here, but yeah, because we have not styled them in CSS yet, so they are looking way out of proportion. So let's move on to CSS and let's go on to styling these. We'll start by the video card container. We'll give the position as relative, the width as 92%. The margin will be automatic. Height will be 10 viewport width, and the display will be flex. After this, we'll set the bottom margin as 20 pixels and we'll justify the content to space between. Next up, we have the video card. This was about the container. Now we have the video card that is inside of it. We'll also set the position as relative, and the minimum width should be a calculation of 100% divided by 5 minus 10 pixels. Now, this is a calculation that is predefined, so we do not need to put much thinking into this. And after that, we have the width also as a calculation of 100% by 5 minus 10 pixels. After this, let's move on to the height, that is 100%. The border radius, because we want the border to be slightly curved, so the border radius should be 5 pixels, and the overflow, any kind of overflow should be hidden. And the background here is a hex code with the code 030B17. After this, let's move on to the video card image and the card video. which we are going to be styling similarly. So we'll put both of these here, video card image, comma, card video. We need to use these different, we need to use the similar elements for these both. So we'll style them together. We'll give the width as 100%, the height as 100% as well, and the object width as cover. After this, we have some properties for the card video that are going to differ from the one above. So we'll write it separately and we'll give the position as absolute. Now we also want to add some hover properties over our video card. So we'll write a video card over here and also to the image. So we have to set the display to none. So we are done here. And when we save this and we go over to our website, we can see that we have got these cards right over here. And whenever we are hovering over them, the picture that we have put is getting displayed. So after this, we also have to add the animation. That is, we also have to do this thing that the video plays behind whenever we hover on this. So that we'll do using JavaScript. So let's move on to our JavaScript. So we'll add a quick comment here that we are doing this for the video cards. And we're going to be creating a variable called video cards. The query selector, and we'll put inside the video card inside of this. We'll use the for each loop for all the items inside of a card, and we'll add an event listener that will be mouse over, but whenever we hover over that thing, it does the functions that we are defining right over here. So let video is equals to item dot children, and we'll set the index to 1, and then video dot play. So after this, we also have to add one for the video to pause. So we'll write here, we'll add another event listener, and that will be same as this, except for the part that we are writing mouse over there and mouse leave here. So whenever we leave that mouse, whenever we stop hovering over the card, the video will stop playing, and whenever we hover again over the card, the video will start playing again. So we are done for this. Now let's move on to the card sliders. The card sliders, first we have to create them in our HTML, style them in CSS, and then we'll come over again to the JS for adding these cards that are right over here. We'll first create them in HTML, style them in CSS, and then we'll come over again to our JS to see how it works. For now, let's see whether or not our cards are playing, our video cards are playing whenever we hover over them. So we'll save this file right here. And when we go to our website, we see that whenever we hover over these cards, the video is playing beside. So that is it. It's perfect. Now let's move on to these sliders, these card sliders that are here. Let's move on to creating them. Here we have only created two of sliders, sliders as such. One is recommended for you, and the other is popular shows. You can add as many as you want, and you can add different pictures, and you can use different animations as well. Here, whenever we are hovering over this, the movie name and the description is showing, and a button is there that is called add to watch list. So let's go over to our HTML and start writing that. We'll create an H1 class with the name title, and here we'll write recommended for you. After this, let's create another class by the name of movies list, and inside this we'll give a button which will have a class pre button. Now these pre button and next button is for these buttons that are here for sliding the cards from one slide to another. We have these buttons right over here. You can see that it is written over there btn, that is button. So the pre button and the next button. So we create a class here called pre button. We'll also give this a title, a button, and inside this we'll add the image tag which we will use to insert the image of the logo that is there of that arrow. The arrow that we are using for the button will use the image tag to add that. Now let's create a similar button class here as well, and we'll name it as the next button. After this, let's contain a div called card container, and inside of this div we'll put an image of the first poster that we are going to be adding. So let's put an image tag, and let's say images slash poster one. We'll give it a class as card image. Now after this, we are going to be creating another class that we'll be calling card body, which we'll be using to write the description of the movie and the name of the movie. So inside this card body, we have an h2 tag that we'll use with the class of name, and let's say we'll have our movie name here, whatever the movie name is. After this, we'll use the h6 tag for the content of the movie that we'll be writing there, and we'll name this class as description, and let's give this some default text. Now after this, we have to create a button for the add to watch list. So we'll give a class here as watch list button, and we'll add the tag text here, add to watch list. All right, so this was it. Now let's save this and see if that we have got that here. So we can see that we have got the recommended for you text over here. We've got these pre and next buttons over here, the movie poster and the movie name and the all these things over here. Now all we need to do is style them. But before styling them, let's add on all our cards and all the movie posters that we are going to be putting here. That is the recommended for you and the popular shows. So we need to do nothing much for this. We just need to copy paste this same thing multiple times. So before doing that, let us just style this out, and then we'll create the same. So we have a class here called title, which has the color as white, the left padding as 4%, the text transform will be capitalized, because just in case we don't have capital letters in our HTML code, we want it to be capitalized by default. The font size and font weight. So the font size would be 22 pixels and the font weight would be 500. After this, we have the movies list class. So inside the movies width class, we'll set the width as 100%, the height as 220 pixels, position to relative, and margin should be 10 pixels from the top, 0 and 20 pixels from the left and right. So we're done here. Now moving on to the next class that we have is the card container. Now inside the card container, we'll set the position to relative again, the width as 92%, left padding as 10 pixels, height as 220 pixels, flex display, align items to the center, the x and y overflow the x overflow will be automatic and the y overflow will be visible because we want it to be sliding. So after this, we'll also add a thing called scroll behavior, which will be smooth. Now we have another element here which we are calling the card container, and we are adding the WebKit scroll bar, wherein we'll put the display to none. All right, next up is our card. The position for which will be relative. The minimum width should be 150 pixels. The width otherwise should be 150 pixels as well. And the height will be 200 pixels. Border radius, overflow, and a transition of 0.5 seconds. After this, we have the card image. So the width and height of the card image would be 100%, and the object fit would be cover. Now we also want to add some hover properties to our card. So inside the class card, we'll write hover here, and we'll put the transform property here. That is, this is when we hover over the movie poster, we hover over the slide, and it becomes slightly bigger than the size it originally is. After this, we have the card hover dot card body. We put the opacity as 1. Next up is the card body class. So inside the body class, we'll put the opacity as 0, the width as 100% as well as the height, position as absolute, the top margin as 0, the left margin as 0 as well. The z index should be 2 because we want it to be on top of the card, that is we want the text to be on top of the background of the card that is there. We'll add the similar property linear gradient which we used when we was creating our sliders. So right here to bottom, we'll use an RGBA code for the color, which is 4815 and 0. I'll add a bit of a padding here, which will be 10 pixels. And some transition here as well, which is going to be 0. Now let's save this and look what our website looks like. Okay, so there were a few things that we forgot to style, and without that, we are not going to see our output as we expect it to be. That is the classes that we created right over here, the name, the description, and the watchlist button class. So let's style that as well. So inside name, we'll set the color to white, the font size, and all the other basic properties that we have been using till now. After this class, we have our description class, the description of the movie that we are going to be writing there. For now, it is just a default content that we have put. We also forgot to add our font weight here, so let's do that quickly. So our font weight would be 500. Now, after this is the description class. So inside our description class, some properties would be same. The color would be white, opacity would be 0.8. The margin from the top and bottom would be 5 pixels, and from the left and right it would be 0. Font weight is 500 and the font size is 12 pixels. After this, we have our watch list button. So the watch list button position will be relative and the width would be 100%. Let's style all the basic things that we have been doing till now. We also don't need any extra borders that come along with a button, so we'll set the border here as none. The text alignment should be on the right hand side. The color will use the RGBA code here. That is 255, 255, 255, and 0.5. After this, we have the margin. The cursor should be pointer type. Now, after this, we'll add an attribute here that we are going to be calling the watch list button before. And the content will be an empty string. The position will be absolute. We'll add a background image here, which is going to be referencing to our images in the images folder. So this is images slash add.png. We have an image here with the name of add.png right over here. So after this, we'll also set the background size, and it will be cover, and some transform properties to it. We'll add some hover properties to our watch list button. So watch list button dot hover. The color is again white. The background is RGBA. So we are done for the watch list button here. Now let's move on to our pre and next buttons. So some common properties that we are going to be using in our pre and next button, we'll design them together. The position should be absolute. We have zero margin from the top. Width is 5%. Height 100%. The Z index as 2. We don't need any default borders. They are coming by default until and unless we put it there. Now the individual attributes of both these buttons. So the pre button, we want the left margin as 0. Next up is the next button. Next up, let's move on to the pre button and the next button images. We want the width as 15 pixels, the height as 20 pixels, and the opacity as 0. Last up here is the lastly, we just have to add one last thing and we are done with our styling. So we have to add the pre button hover on the image and the next button hover on the image. We'll set the opacity to 1. And we are done with our styling right now. So let us save this and let us go see how our website looks like. So we have saved our file and we'll go to the website to look at what it looks like. Okay, so it looks perfect. The slider is working, the navigation bar is right over here. These animation seems to be working, and here you can see that these pictures are all set to be seen. What I have done now here is I have added the HTML elements after that. As you can see that this was the first card, this was the first division with the name card that we created, and we put a picture like the first poster's picture inside of it. And you can do similarly, you can just copy paste it several times so that you get this whole effect. And you can copy paste it several times. So I have copy pasted these 12 pictures, and then I have created another h1 tag where I have done this popular shows. And I have similarly, like we did for the one above, like we did for this section recommended for you, similarly we have done it here as well. So that was it about the HTML and CSS part. Now one small thing that keeps remaining is the JS part for the sliders. The JS part for this button to work, like when we click on this button, the slides go to the left and we see a shift in the slides. So let's get on to doing that. So we've already created a comment here that we are going to create the card sliders, and let us start creating that. We'll add a query selector here, query selector all. And inside it, we'll write card container. Similarly, here we will create the three buttons, and we'll write dot three in here. And now all that is left to do is the next buttons. So we'll create the next buttons, and all right. So we'll also use a for each loop for the card containers here, and for each items, that is I, we're going to be performing some operations. The container width here will be the same container dimensions dot width. And after this, we have the next buttons at index E. We'll add an event listener here, that when we click on that next button, we have to perform these operations. So this part is done, and now we'll also write the code for the pre-button part. So in terms of the pre-buttons, we'll do something that is similar. We'll add an event listener that corresponds to clicking. All right, so we are done for now, and let us save all this and we'll see how our final website looks like. All right, so here we are at the website. Let's refresh it. And if we go towards these cards, we can see that by clicking the next button, the cards are sliding towards the left, and we can see new cards right over here. And uh, by clicking the pre button, the cards are getting back to their original position once again. And same is happening with these. So, all right, this was all that we had to create. And if you want, you can create the entire website using similar functionalities. But this was all that we have created. Right now you can add extra things and you can add your own inputs. You can add more things from the Disney Plus original website, and you can change these text right over here to make it look more realistic and make it look more like the original website. So that was all, guys, and let's just go over once again what we have done. So we created this navigation bar where when we click on the search button, it extends the width of the search bar, and we have the subscribe and the login button. We created these sliders using JavaScript, and after that we also have these animation effects that we created using CSS and JavaScript mainly. And then here we have the movie cards, and whenever we click on the next button, it goes towards the right hand side, and whenever we click on the pre button, it goes back to the left hand side. So that was all about it. I hope it is clear, and thank you so much.